June 8, 1967, a sunny afternoon in the Mediterranean. Out of nowhere, unmarked aircraft swoop down on a U.S. Navy intelligence ship. Rockets, cannons, and torpedoes tear into its hull, killing 34 sailors and wounding 171 more. Yet, this story is rarely spoken of in American history classes. How could an attack on a U.S. Navy vessel, one that nearly sparked World War III, simply fade into the shadows? Why did Washington remain silent while families buried their sons? And more importantly, who benefited from this silence? This isn't just about history. It's about truth buried under decades of politics. The story of the USS Liberty remains one of America's most controversial mysteries. Today, we're breaking through the silence to uncover why America forgot. The year was 1967, and the Middle East was a powder keg. Israel launched preemptive strikes against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In just days, Arab air forces were destroyed, and territory dramatically changed hands. Every nation watched closely, especially the United States. America had a powerful tool in the region, the USS Liberty. Officially a research ship, it was, in fact, a floating spy station listening to military communications from all sides. It was the eyes and ears of Washington during the Six-Day War, but placing a spy ship so close to a battlefield was dangerous, and within 48 hours, danger turned into disaster, when the very ally America supported would unleash fire on that ship. At 2 p.m. on June 8th, Israeli Mirage fighter jets approached the Liberty. Crew members recalled seeing the plane circling before opening fire. Cannons shredded the deck, rockets tore through antennas, and napalm engulfed parts of the ship in flames. The Liberty flew a large American flag, clearly visible in the Mediterranean wind. Survivors later testified that the flag was impossible to miss. Yet, Israeli pilots reported back claiming they saw no flag at all. For 20 minutes, the Liberty endured relentless fire, but the nightmare was just beginning. As the crew scrambled to save their ship, another wave of aircraft moved in for the kill. 3 Israeli torpedo boats closed in fast. They unleashed 6 torpedoes, one of which slammed into the Liberty's starboard side, ripping a massive hole and killing 25 sailors instantly. The sea poured into the ship, threatening to sink her. The crew fought desperately to plug the flooding, even as machine gun fire swept the decks. Sailors trying to launch lifeboats for survival watched in horror as torpedo boats destroyed them deliberately. Survivors called it one of the darkest moments of their lives. International law was clear. Firing on life rafts is a war crime, but that didn't stop the assault. The Liberty was meant to sink, with no witnesses left alive. The Liberty's communications were in chaos. Antennas were shredded, systems jammed, but 2 radio men, Terry Halbardier and Glenn Oliphant, managed to repair a line under fire. Their distress signal finally broke through. The message reached the 6th Fleet. On board the USS Saratoga, F-4 Phantom jets were launched to protect the Liberty. Help was minutes away, giving the crew hope. But then, something strange happened. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara recalled the fighters. Survivors later said they felt abandoned by their own government. Why would Washington call back planes? That could have saved American lives? Israel quickly claimed it was a tragic mistake. Officials argued they believed the Liberty was an Egyptian freighter, but the Liberty was 5 times larger than the Egyptian vessel, with a completely different profile. Even stranger, U.S. officials repeated this explanation. President Lyndon B. Johnson downplayed the attack, insisting it was a case of mistaken identity. But many high-ranking officers didn't buy it. Why would America accept such a flimsy excuse for an attack that killed dozens of its sailors? Was it fear of political fallout or something deeper? Crew members of the Liberty carried scars for life, both physical and emotional. Many were sworn to secrecy. Some were threatened with prison if they spoke publicly. For decades, silence was enforced by the very government they served. But survivors didn't forget. They described low-flying aircraft close enough to see pilots, faces, repeated attacks long after the ship raised its flag, and torpedo boats circling like vultures. Their testimony painted a picture far different from the official story. For them, it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. And that's what haunts the memory of the USS Liberty to this day. Why would America protect Israel even after such an attack? In 1967, Israel was seen as a vital ally against Soviet influence in the Middle East. The Cold War shaped every decision in Washington. Officials feared that exposing Israel could fracture alliances and weaken U.S. influence. At the same time, the U.S. needed access to the Suez Canal and stability in oil-rich regions. Silence seemed safer than confrontation, but silence came at a cost. For the families of the fallen, it felt like betrayal. Justice was traded for politics, and memory was buried for strategy. Documents later revealed troubling details. Israeli jets carried no markings that day, violating international law. U.S. signals showed Israel jammed specific American frequencies, and pilots confirmed the ship was American before being told to attack again. Declassified NSA reports supported survivors' claims. Israel knew what it was doing. Yet, the official record ignored this evidence, framing the attack as confusion during wartime. This wasn't just a cover-up, it was a rewriting of history, and the question remains, who ordered it and why? After 2 hours of attack, the Liberty was barely afloat. Fires raged, compartments flooded, and bodies lay across the deck. Yet, against all odds, the crew kept her alive. Captain William McGonigal, badly wounded, refused to abandon his post. His leadership earned him the Medal of Honor, though, strangely, it was awarded in private, not at the White House, as tradition demanded. Even in recognition, silence surrounded the Liberty. The U.S. government seemed determined to keep the event in the shadows, even as its sailors were hailed as heroes. In the years that followed, Israel paid compensation, $3.3 million to families of the dead, $3.5 million to the wounded, and later $6 million for damage to the ship. But many saw this as blood money, payment to bury the truth. No Israeli officer was punished. No American inquiry ever held leaders accountable. Survivors were left with checks, but no justice. Money replaced accountability, and history quietly moved on. But for those who lived it, the scars were deeper than any payment could heal. Over time, the Liberty faded from headlines. School textbooks never mentioned it, politicians avoided it, and the public remained largely unaware. It was as if the attack had never happened. Why did America forget? Because forgetting was convenient. Forgetting preserved alliances, avoided embarrassment, and allowed leaders to sidestep hard questions. But forgetting also dishonored the men who fought to keep their ship alive. It erased the truth from national memory. And that silence is why the story still feels unfinished. The USS Liberty is not just history. It's a warning. It shows how political interests can outweigh the lives of servicemen. It proves that even allies can act against one another when secrets are at stake. Today, as tensions rise across the globe, the Liberty reminds us that transparency matters. Without it, truth becomes a casualty of war. And unless history is faced honestly, mistakes are doomed to repeat themselves. For decades, survivors and their families have called for a full congressional investigation. Admirals, generals, and senators have supported them, but their voices remain unanswered. The truth has been buried under layers of diplomacy and secrecy. Yet every anniversary, survivors gather to honor their shipmates, refusing to let the story die. Their message is clear: forgetting is not the same as forgiving, and the truth still matters, even 50 years later. The USS Liberty attack is more than a forgotten chapter. It's a test of memory, loyalty, and justice. It asks us whether political convenience is worth more than truth. America may have chosen to forget, but remembering is our duty. For the 34 men who never came home, for the survivors who still bear the scars, and for the principles of accountability. If you believe their story deserves to be remembered, share this video, subscribe for more untold history, and keep the voices of liberty alive.